Alright, so you're now at chapter 14. Luckily, this one is going to be relatively quick. We are just going to be looking at grains and breaking down a few simple concepts. We will review what a whole grain is and discuss what happens when a whole grain is processed into a refined grain from a structural and a nutritional standpoint. We will also talk about two concepts related to refined grains, enrichment and fortification. And both of these involve the physical addition of various nutrients into our foods. So for this chapter, know the main structure of whole grains. There are three main components of a whole grain, and when it is processed, two of these components are lost. So know what these three are, and know which nutrients each of these three components contain. The three components of whole grains also represent one of the main characteristics of whole grains, but also know what their nutritional value is. And then also we'll be going over refinement and enrichment, as well as fortification. Know what these three definitions mean. When you think of grains, you probably first jump to wheat, but there are many more. All of the food items that are listed on this slide are different types of grains, and in their natural forms, they are all great examples of whole grains. As they naturally occur in nature, all grains have three main components, and this is the endosperm, the germ, and the bran. There will be some processing of any grain in order to allow it to reach your kitchen table, but minimally processed or whole grains are processed to keep these three components relatively intact. So whole grains are going to have an endosperm, a germ, and a bran, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. Whole grains contain many carbohydrates, but with them they also contain many essential nutrients. So they are a very nutrient-dense food. Because the endosperm, bran, and germ are all kept in a similar proportion to the intact or naturally occurring grain, they also contain protein, fiber, iron, and many B vitamins. Iron helps to transport oxygen throughout our blood, which gives us sufficient energy to focus and concentrate throughout the day. B vitamins help to regulate our metabolism and are also responsible for maintaining very high energy levels. Fiber helps with digestion, and it also keeps our arteries clear and blood flow smooth. And the addition of protein has many roles, but one of the most important is that it releases energy from carbohydrates slowly and consistently, so that we are more likely to have consistent energy levels throughout the day as opposed to highs and lows. This is the main structure of all whole grains and grains as they naturally occur in nature. All of them have these three main components: the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. The outer layer of the grain is known as the bran. This is a very thin layer and holds many vitamins and minerals, and it is also the main source of dietary fiber. The endosperm is the middle layer of the grain and comprises the largest section of the grain. This holds all of the calories and all the energy producing nutrients, which is very good, but without the other sections, this would not provide much nutritional value. And it will be important that you remember this when we go over refined grains. The germ is in the center of the whole grain and contains essential fats, antioxidants, vitamin E, and the B vitamins. So this is a whole grain. If there was an exam and you were asked to explain the structural difference between whole and refined grains, it will be helpful to know this. So note that refined grains are just made from the endosperm, which just contains the carbohydrates and protein, so mostly calories without any other nutrients. So let's talk about refined grains. Refined grains are a relatively recent addition to our food supply, as they have been added to our diets only in the past few hundred years. Through the removal of the bran and the germ, refined grains are significantly modified from their natural state. If you go back to what we were discussing on the last slide, the bran and the germ are the smaller portions of the whole grain, but they are the ones that contain all of the micronutrients. So refined grains really just contain the starch and the protein. So calories, but nothing else. This is a type of food that most people would refer to as a source of empty calories. So it just has calories without any of the other very essential nutrients. So for many years, there was a very high prevalence of birth defects, iron deficiency, severe skin disorders, and diseases of the nervous system that we simply assumed were just a part of normal living. We truly live in an incredible society today to not have to even consider these things. It was not until well into the 20th century that we finally realized that such a high prevalence of these diseases was related to a high consumption of these types or the refined types of grains. So at that point, we decided to enrich refined grains, which put back just some, but many essential nutrients that were lost through the refinement process. The effect that this refinement had on the health of the American citizens was incredible, as these diseases and complications are basically non-existent in our country today. There are certainly millions of people worldwide affected by certain birth defects and diseases like beriberi and pellagra, but due to the enrichment process, most of us have never even heard of these diseases. To finish up, we're just going to run over enrichment and fortification in a little bit more detail. These are two terms that are very similar and sometimes used in the same way, but they both have very different meanings, and it's important that we do have an understanding of what these different meanings are. So enrichment, this means adding back nutrients that were originally present in a food but lost during the processing. And then fortification is adding nutrients to a food that were never present in that food. So let's take orange juice. Orange juice by itself, it's a great source of vitamin C. It has quite a few calories, has quite a bit of sugar. One nutrient that it does not have in high amounts is calcium. So what we do with a lot of the orange juices that we drink today is we put calcium that's not originally present in that orange juice into the orange juice. Because it's not normally there, that is fortification. Now enrichment, that is what we do with the bread products. So when we have a natural grain, it's going to have many of these B vitamins, it's going to have high amounts of iron, vitamin E, very essential fats. And when we process them, we're removing two very important structural pieces of that grain. And in doing so, we're losing a lot of those nutrients. So enrichment is adding these nutrients back. So it could be adding the essential fats, it could be adding the B vitamins, it could be adding the iron, but it's always going to be adding back nutrients that were lost, that were originally present. So if we added calcium, which is not present in whole grains, if we added that to the bread, that would be fortification. But if we take away something like the thiamine, which is a B vitamin, and then add it back in, that is enrichment.